Hey, thanks for downloading OV117, Vault Movies 3. This episode was actually recorded a few months ago before Mike left on his sabbatical, so he's here, so that's awesome. He's back in this episode, sort of. The reason that I'm releasing this episode is because after PopCon and kind of getting the ground running, like directly after PopCon, Tiny got a new job. So in order to kind of give him time to get acclimated to his new job, I figured I'd release this episode so that we didn't have to record, so he can concentrate on his new job. So that's why this episode is kind of chronologically out of whack. It's still a new episode, never before heard, so I hope you enjoy it. Other than that, you know where to find us. We'll have the outro and everything. This will be a normal episode. I do want to mention that since we've been having some downtime this month with Tiny getting a new job and everything, I am finally starting on this solo side project podcast that I'm doing. There will be more details about that as in the coming days. I'm hoping that the first episode is released like August 3rd, and I'll do a whole thing with Obsessive Viewer. But just be on the lookout for that. If you like my voice, or if you're not annoyed by me at all, I will be having a solo podcast on the side. So without further ado, here's OV117, Vault Movies 3. This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on the Twitters.
And this is Mike, and you can find me at I am Mike White on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Hello, guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Obsessive Viewer Podcast. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be a genre, trope, movie, or show. Each episode, you can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com and find our entire catalog anywhere you can find podcasts, iTunes, whatever. And also check out the blog at obsessiveviewer.com. So, guys, long time no talk.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
We just recorded our bonus episode, guys. So yeah, this week's episode is a special one because occasionally we do Vault movie episodes, which basically
we've done it twice.
Yes, the topic's so nice we did it twice. I don't know.
Oh boy.
I've had such a long week. I've been so tired. So Vault Movies is essentially, these are the movies that we feel are strong enough to warrant an entire episode devoted to them and to be locked in a hypothetical vault in which they would not be lost in the event of an apocalyptic or extinction level event.
Same concept as like a desert island movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except we have a vault.
Right. So we've previously done 2 episodes devoted to Vault movies. I'll have the links in the show notes. And off the top of my head, I can't remember what movies we've done. Back to the Future.
The Godfather.
Halloween.
Seven.
Pulp Fiction.
2 more Pulp Fiction.
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan. Thank you for saving the topic. So this week, we each have a movie that we're going to talk about. Who should go first?
I can.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Tiny, hit us with your entry.
My selection, I present to you, listeners, co-hosts, friends, any ghosts that might be listening. I present to you The Shawshank Redemption.
Nice.
Based on Stephen King's short story, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption.
Actually, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption.
That's right. My bad. I've never read it, so it's just there's no the. This is a highly and widely revered movie, and it's for a very good reason because it's really good. I think what makes this movie just fantastic is basically everything about it. It has a really catchy title because you're like, The Shawshank Redemption. What the hell is that? And then you have this just absolutely fantastic story of a guy who is kind of ambiguously convicted of a serious crime and goes to jail for 2 life sentences. And then, he tries to break his way out. It takes place over decades of time. Incredible cast of characters. There's just remarkable acting. Has a really great setting in this old, very draconian kind of prison. Clear cut and very effective villains and antagonists throughout this. And it just taps into these various human emotions that are just presented perfectly. I think prison is a really, especially like a post-war prison like this, is a really interesting setting for these kinds of characters, and just to see the kinds of the range of human emotion that people go through in prison. They try to cling to hope, which is something that's hit on several times throughout this movie. It's about deep despair and how that little bit of hope you can cling to can pull you out of that. It's about how there are some people in prison that really aren't bad people. It shows you how people who are in positions of power can sometimes be way worse than the criminals we put into prison. It just hits all these different notes and all these amazing highs and lows of what it means to have power and to have no power and to be considered less than a person, and how powerful hope is, really. I think that's probably the highest, the biggest point of the movie is how powerful hope can be. It's just a phenomenal movie. If you've never seen it, I don't know what you're doing listening to this podcast. It's just one of those movies that I think it goes across generations. I thought for a while this movie was maybe just people like in our generation who kind of came of age in the late 90s, early 2000s, really like latched onto this movie. But I think it's much more than that. This movie, because people in their 50s and 60s, any kind of age range really like this movie a lot. I think for a while, or maybe still, it is at the top of the IMDb 250, top 250. It's probably still a top 5. I know it was the number 1 for a while. But yeah, this is just a absolutely phenomenal movie. It's one of those movies that you watch and you try to break it down and think what you would do differently or what else you would like to see from the movie, but you really, in my opinion, you can't find anything really. There's very little that you could improve on in this movie. It's just phenomenal, and it has Morgan Freeman as the narrator, so it's kind of is it the original Morgan Freeman narrated movie?
I think so. I think it's the first one.
It kind of set off the trend, if you will, made him famous.
I hope.
But yeah, this is absolutely a vault movie. I think it's one of the best movies ever made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple quick anecdotes about this movie. I talked about this on a recent episode, if you don't mind me.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
This was the first movie I watched after moving into my apartment, and I made the joke that it's because it. Tiny, you said that I was classing up the apartment a bit, and I was like, no, yeah, it has nothing to do with. It's everything to do with the fact that it's a really quality movie, and nothing to do with the fact that it's about a guy who escapes from a prison after 20 years, or after 2 decades in prison. But right. No, and it's funny because this is a movie for me that is kind of an accidental benchmark movie for me. In that, I watched it for the first time. It was the first movie I watched moving into my own place after way too long. And another is this was such a lame, in retrospect, thing, but back in, I think it was like 2013 or something, there was that pastor or some church or something that was like, this is the day that the world's going to end and the world's ending, and it was a big hoopla in the media and stuff, and it was just, obviously it was a hoax and all that, but it was something like when the day happened, it was like a Friday or something, I was like, I don't have anything going on today, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to not pretend, but I was just like, you know what, if this was the last day, like if this was really the last day on Earth, what would I want the last movie I watched be?
Wow, that's such a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I picked the Shawshank Redemption.
Wow.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
That's a good choice.
yeah.
Great
and
choice.
It was an enjoyable time. And I think part of that, maybe subconsciously, is just, in that context of watching it as the last movie I'd watched on Earth, is it does have a lot to do with hope and characters being, I hesitate to say finding redemption, but I mean, it's a redemptive movie for
Right.
a lot of characters. And it's about Andy Dufresne. One of the things I love about it is that it's about him escaping prison, essentially, but that's a twist. You don't know anything about it, and I apologize if we just spoil it for you, but I mean, who doesn't know that by now?
Yeah.
But it's something that's so satisfying to see him becoming acclimated to the prison environment, to this new environment, and then being resourceful enough to where he becomes a point of he distinguishes himself in this new environment, only to just completely screw over the people that are the actual crooks of this society. It's an interesting almost universal kind. It has an almost universal appeal where you can watch it and you can kind of attach different themes to it while not being, because it could have easily been just a prison movie, but it's not reliant on the fact that it's in prison. It's about the characters and about their struggles as humans and everything. Like, I mean, who doesn't remember Brooks being released and his arc there was just so human in its depiction, and also the subtext of it was about prison and stuff. The dangers of prison and reacclimating to society and stuff like that. But that's downplayed enough to where you're focused on the character and his struggle and everything, that it's not like it's a political point being made or anything like that.
Right.
It's a very, very strong movie on several facets.
Right.
Mike, what do you think of Shawshank?
I like to play a fun game with this movie and two other specific movies. The 1995 Academy Award, Best Picture. The nominees were Quiz Show and Four Weddings and a Funeral, but we can kind of toss those aside. And then Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, and The Shawshank Redemption. And I can't think of a year where there were three just kind of decade-defining movies like in 1995 that are so hard for me to decide which one is which. If I were around, I probably would have given the vote to Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is already in our vault, and it was my choice, and I love Pulp Fiction. And I argued that it was kind of one of the best, or it is the movie of the 90s, but could Shawshank have won it? And of course, we know Forrest Gump did win. But what do you guys think?
I think I would have wanted Shawshank to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it would have been my pick.
I think that's sort of subject to time. Like, what if you had asked 1995 Tiny when I was 8 years old? I'd have been like, "What's Pulp Fiction?" And so at the time I would have been like Forrest Gump without question. But when I was a teenager, I'd be like Shawshank Redemption. But now I'd be like Pulp Fiction. I mean, it's one of those things. I think it kind of depends on where you are as a person, sort of.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Doesn't mean one's better or worse than the
Today, I
other.
would rank them Pulp Fiction, Shawshank, and Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably do Shawshank, Pulp Fiction, and Forrest Gump. I haven't seen Forrest Gump in a long time.
Yeah.
Still good.
I'm curious to see it.
So I saw this for the first time living with Matt, freshman year of college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is funny considering that it's always on Saturday afternoons and Sunday afternoons on WGN.
Or TNT.
Or TNT, especially during the late 90s, early 2000s. It was always on. I remember that was a criticism of me when I got really into it and I bought it. It was like people kept saying, "You haven't already seen that?" Well, no, I hadn't. And so, I mean, when you're the third person to talk about a movie that we've already been talking about, there's not a whole lot left to say. But I agree with all of everything you guys have said. I think the movie has a lot of iconic scenes fun to think about. I always like when Andy Dufresne kind of comes out of the tunnel for the first time, and I don't know. It's just a fantastic movie, and I definitely think it deserves to be in the vault.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
The scene where he plays the record from the warden's office.
Yeah.
Gosh, what's the music? Is it Mozart he's playing?
It's Hollaback Girl. I'm kidding.
I can't remember which.
It's French, right?
Is it French? Well, it was an opera, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, because he was talking about the lyrics, so yeah. It was
German? Is it German?
I don't recall.
Matt, do you remember my reaction when I first saw it?
Yeah,
Yay! Yay!
That was your reaction. No, go ahead. What was it?
I don't remember it. I was just seeing if you
Oh. I actually remember it because I don't. I'm kidding.
I remember you really, really loved it.
Yeah. I bought it.
Yeah.
I went out and bought it right away.
You said something that it kind of stuck with me, but I can't remember what it was. So it didn't really stick with me that much.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, man.
No, but yeah, I think you celebrated me for recommending it to you, and
And
I was just like, yeah. And then in retrospect, it's like, hey guy, I'm living with and I just met. Here's this movie about this guy who just goes to prison and he gets raped a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's funny, but I'm not sure we just met. I think I watched it in like December. We've known each other for 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We had already cuddled by then.
Right. Oh yeah, we've been sleeping together for 6 months. Jesus.
See, that's all I really have to say about it. I'm guessing most of our listeners have seen it. It's just one of those.
Yeah.
It's a borderline perfect movie in my book, and absolutely in my top 10 of all
Good
time.
choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. So should we move on to the next in entry?
Yeah, that's fine.
Mike, do you want to throw yours?
Sure. So I thought a long time about what movie I wanted to put in here. And I even fought bringing up this movie for a while, just because I think it's too obvious, and I knew that eventually I'd be talking about this movie, and it would just seem too spot on, too on the nose. But I figure the time is right. We only do 1 or 2 of these a year, and so since Star Wars Episode 7 is coming out in December, I would like to submit Star Wars to the vault. What is that?
Such a good movie.
Oh,
I'm just thinking about Star Wars.
It just sounded like oh no.
No. It was because I have to wait 8 more months for Episode 7 to come out.
Now, if you are wondering what I'm talking about, which movie I'm talking about when I say Star Wars, I picked my words specifically and carefully. I meant Star Wars, and I mean Star Wars in the sense that in the 90s, when I fell in love with Star Wars, it was only called Star Wars, the first of 3 movies called Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I loved Star Wars. Later on, of course, they named it in the 1997 re-releases when they decided that they were just going to advertise it as the episode title. It became Episode 4, A New Hope. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And that's kind of a minor bugaboo of mine. I don't like when people say, give me your favorite movies, and I say Star Wars, and they're like, which one? I said, I meant Star Wars. I said the one that I mean. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Star Wars, 1977 Star Wars, which is the story of a comedic duo of astromech droids and their adventures through space.
Astromech droids, wow.
Yeah. So it's so obvious, right, that this movie has to be in the vault. It is like, what do you even say? It's one of the most seen movies of all time. It's one of the most popular movies of all time. We're still talking about it in a way that's fresh and new and interesting and important some 37, 8 years later. that's incredible. Just the lasting impression that this little movie in 1977, produced and directed by this dork of a man, George Lucas, came out. It's just crazy what it's done. And so I could talk for a little while about, what it meant to me, but I've already done that. I did that with Matt. I could talk about just kind of the scope of the merchandising and the scope of all the spin-offs and the expanded universe and the action figures has meant to me and has meant to the world, but we've already done that before. So when we talk about vault movies, we talk about the quality of the movie. And I know that I kind of broke that rule when I asked about the Academy Awards with Shawshank Redemption, but Tiny mostly spoke of the quality of the movie, so I think I want to do that with Star Wars. That said, it's a f***ing fantastic movie. And what I love about Star Wars, despite the relatively common belief that the entire thing was imagined before the first movie was produced, it really wasn't. I mean, George Lucas had a sketch of what he wanted to happen, and but it was vastly different from the movie we got, and they had no idea that they were going to make a sequel until the first one made billions and billions of dollars. Well, not billions, but hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so Star Wars works because it works as a self-contained story. And you can't really say that about any of the other movies, especially Empire Strikes Back, which I think is the more popular or the most popular. People kind of cite that as the best one, but that one only works as the keystone, the centerpiece of the trilogy.
Right.
The first movie is fantastic. It's the 3-act form. Is blended together perfectly. We get the introduction of the space pirate in Han Solo, who kind of redeems himself at the end. And I've never met somebody who sees the scene in Star Wars where Han comes back and doesn't cheer or doesn't smile or something like that. That stuff is beautiful. Also, the humor, I think a lot of people forget about. I think people dog on the humor of Star Wars because of Jar Jar and the prequel trilogy, but the first one is initially very funny, especially some of the dialogue with Han and Luke and Han and Chewie and Han with the people on the Death Star when he says we're all fine here. How are you? That's one of my favorites. The special effects even today are incredible. Done with miniatures back then and enhanced later on with computer effects, are just incredible to watch and so much fun to watch. I love, specifically for me, I'm not a big fan of fantasy, in the Lord of the Rings traditional sense of fantasy. I've always been more of a sci-fi type of person. And it wasn't until just recently, maybe in the last 5 years, that I realized Star Wars really is a fantasy movie. Luke Skywalker, based on the hero's myth, Joseph Campbell's hero's myth. It's very much a fantasy type of movie. There are wizards and princesses and pirates and magic and all of that stuff set in this science fiction atmosphere and universe. So it's kind of like a way for me to get into something fantasy that I wouldn't have before because I love this thing so much. What else is there to say? Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia is unbelievably hot in the movie. And I think my initial impression of her was that I had seen her in Blues Brothers, where she was a little bit older, and so she was kind of a little out of my sphere of interest as far as girls were concerned. So I don't have like this love for Princess Leia that a lot of people, 10 or so years older than I have. But I can recognize today that Carrie Fisher at 19, 20 was ridiculously hot. People criticize Mark Hamill's performance sometimes for being a little immature. It was, after all, his first major feature. But I think his immaturity and his lack of experience kind of lends itself to the character of Luke Skywalker, so I appreciate that. I also love the gravitas that Alec Guinness brings to the picture, and of course the story about how they got him and how everybody was a little intimidated by him on set. You kind of feel that, and I think you're supposed to feel that for Obi-Wan. I also think that Vader is terrifying early on. He's not so scary now that I'm a little older and a little used to it. But I'd like to think, or I'd like to wonder sometimes what a young kid would think if they saw Vader on the screen for the first time. That stuff interests me. And so it's my favorite adventure movie ever. It's, I think, my fourth favorite movie of all time, based on my most recent top 10 list. And I'm sorry it's so obvious. If you're a listener of this show and if you listen to our Vault episodes, I'm either sorry it took me so long to submit Star Wars or sorry that I did such an obvious one so early. But there it is. I submit Star Wars as my pick for the Vault.
Nice. Long overdue, Mike. What the hell took you so long to get to this movie? No. Yeah. You know, you mentioned that Star Wars is that Empire is regarded as the best, but this is a self-contained movie, and it's strong in that respect. And I remember saying to you like years ago, saying like, yeah, I think Star Wars is better than Empire, and you're like, really? And I do think that this is my favorite of the franchise so far, but. Yeah. And
I don't hide the fact that I used to. My favorite movie has changed many times over time.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Initially, it was Return of the Jedi, and then throughout high school and college, it was Empire, and I've kind of circled back to Star Wars.
In just generally speaking, favorite movies in general should change as you grow anyway. But
sure.
The reason why I liked this movie so much more than the others is because it is a self-contained movie, and I honestly, you mentioned the 3-act structure and everything. Try to find a more tightly paced and economically told story, I guess, in a 2-hour span in a movie. I honestly don't.
Cannot.
I really don't think you can. I think that this is the perfect 2-hour movie in terms of pacing and action and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, and you mentioned Darth Vader being scary. I kind of wonder what my nephews would think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Show it to them.
I think I'm going to try to. They're not really that open to watching new stuff unless it's stuff that they're familiar with. So, yeah, but
well, kids are dumb.
They are dumb. But yeah, it's these. You hit the nail on the head with everything you said. These movies are fun. They're adventure movies, and it's thrilling to watch it. And I mean, my feelings on the entire franchise notwithstanding, and the fandom of it, I respect Star Wars as this cultural icon that it is. And one of the things that I noticed was thinking about while watching my Blu-ray set a couple months ago was that there are so many working directors today who would not have a career had Star Wars not inspired them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
and I think that's
definitely.
Yeah, and I think that the level of influence that Star Wars bestowed upon an entire generation and generations of young sci-fi minded creative people who would go on to create some of the stuff that I adore is worthy of of Vault status.
Mm-hmm.
in
cool.
our thing.
So it's in.
Yes.
It's decided. Best movie ever.
Tiny,
Star Wars wins all.
Jesus.
Yay. Yay.
Could have used a pod race, though. Tiny, what'd you think of Star Wars?
Hey, say what you will about Phantom Menace. The pod race is one of my favorite parts.
It's cool.
It's freaking awesome. Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
The pod racing arcade game and the Nintendo 64 game. Shoot. Shoot.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm so glad that Mike brought this up. And I loved everything that you said. You tried to talk about the quality of the movie. And I agree 100%. It's been a long time since I've attempted to think about this movie as a standalone movie, like the way you talked.
It's hard to do.
It's very hard to do because I'm one of the people who falls into, I think, oh my gosh, Empire. The second one is my my favorite movie of the whole series. But like you said, you can't have the sequel without the first one, and it's kind of a problem, sort of, to have that opinion. And I love what Matt said about how well it's structured. And I think it's even more impressive when you consider the fact that it literally has the burden of establishing a whole universe. There are tons of characters throughout it. The main character is a teenager, and it spans across several planets and solar systems and stuff like that. That's a really impressive feat, and why I think the movie's great. And then I know Mike didn't want to talk about the pop culture juggernaut that Star Wars is. There's basically nothing else that compares to it. I can't really think of anything else that compares to Star Wars.
I mean, maybe the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, time will tell, but it's like the closest thing to it.
Maybe.
I'd say Trek may be up there in terms of volume of
Star Trek
stuff. Yeah,
maybe.
Like in terms of influence.
Well, influence and just expansion of its universe.
Yeah.
Breadth of universe, I should say.
Could be. Yeah, that might be on par with it. But anyways, one thing that I learned a long time ago, it's a fun fact, in the 80s, I don't remember exactly what year it happened, the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. was nearing completion. It took them 80 years to build the National Cathedral, I believe. It's in the same style of Notre Dame in Paris or Westminster Abbey in London. It's a huge, grand cathedral. And through National Geographic, the federal government held a contest for kids to write in and choose their favorite depiction of evil. Like what would they have as something that's very evil? And whatever was selected would be put as a carving into the National Cathedral somewhere, and the winner was Darth Vader. So if you go to the National Cathedral on the Northwest Tower, very high up, there is a carving of Darth Vader's helmet.
That's fantastic.
So I think
cool.
Something like that just illustrates. That's an interesting example of the pop culture influence of this series, and the movie. This is the movie that kicked it all off. It's Star Wars, man. It's Star Wars. I love it.
Funny thing about that is that about 20, 25 years after that, if you were to ask people who their favorite depiction of evil would be, it would be George Lucas.
Very true.
So yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what would win today. That contest.
Huh.
I mean, I don't think kids read National Geographic anymore. But
What year did you say that was?
it was 80s, early 80s, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
What would it be today? Ooh, boy.
Yeah. I don't
know that I want to think about what it is today.
Yeah. But yeah, Star Wars, love it. Absolutely a top 5 movie, probably. Yeah, good movie.
It's it's something I'll watch on a rainy day sometime.
So you don't like it all that much? Gotcha. Now we know.
No, but I do really enjoy it quite a bit.
Good.
Yeah.
Would it be in your personal vault, Matt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If only for its pacing and its cultural influence for our pop culture.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll take it.
Yeah. I just looked up the National Cathedral sculpture thing.
It's hard to see.
It is, yeah. It's a very small thing, but it's pretty cool. Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's Star Wars, and I guess that leaves it to my pick for
do it, homeboy.
This one.
Homeboy.
Well, for consideration into the Obsessive Viewer Vault, I'm putting forth the 2004 horror movie by Danny Boyle, 28 Days Later. And, this isn't as structurally... it doesn't have the structural integrity of storytelling that Shawshank or Star Wars has, but it's very near and dear to my heart because it really helped. I would go so far as to say it helped reignite my love of horror, and it single-handedly ignited my love of zombie movies. I mean, the semantics of whether or not if it's a zombie movie or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But it did ignite a certain revival of the zombie genre, and it really reinvented it. And as a result of it, several almost countless movies have been produced because of the influence of 28 Days Later and because of what 28 Days Later did to that subgenre. But at its heart, it's a really strong movie, and it's a strong independent movie too, much like Star Wars. Not that I'm comparing Star Wars with 28 Days Later, but it's a very strong independent movie. The opening shots of Jim walking around just London, just empty, are absolutely jaw-dropping in terms of just how it establishes the universe, the world that he's in, and also as a feat of filmmaking. Because if you think about it, 28 Days Later didn't have that big of a budget or anything. They had to film those shots in very short bursts during the early morning hours when there isn't that much traffic out or anything like that. And they actually got topless girls to hold signs and to kind of keep onlookers at bay so that they could be out of the shot. And it's just stuff like that kind of interesting filmmaking techniques and kind of tricks to pull that stuff off is really interesting to me, and it's something that really comes through in the finished product. As it's a very strong post-apocalyptic zombie movie for me, and it follows a 3-act structure, much like Star Wars, but not as seamless as Star Wars. But I mean, you get the first one with Jim and Selena just meeting Selena and the other guy, and then going through until they reach the apartment block where they meet Brendan Gleeson's character and his daughter. And then that first act is just all world building, all very, very horrifying horror, and it really taps into the humanity and lack of humanity that is needed to survive in this horrifying world. The scene where Naomi Harris's character kills her companion is just really gripping to me, and it's what's fascinating to me about it, and what's more what makes it so much more effective is that he's been bitten on the arm, and they see the blood pulling out of it, and he says he's trying to play it off like he's not bitten or anything, and then they kind of have this look, they share this look like, yeah, he's bitten and everything, and then he's like, wait, and then she chops him up with a machete, and it's so almost heartless, but there's a heart to it because she's preventing him from turning into that. And it's a very powerful sequence for me, and moving along to the second act where they find the hope of the signal, and then they go to it's their road to the base is just really more world building, and it plays into more of the question of why should they remain hopeful if nothing is going to happen, or if they find nothing, what does that mean for the world as a whole? And then finally, the third act is where a lot of people get dissuaded by it or kind of dislike it. But I think it works really well in the context of the story because it creates this man versus man dynamic. And it introduces new antagonists that are aside from the creatures, the infected, and it takes the world that's been created throughout the last hour or so of the movie, and it switches it around, tweaks it around, and makes Jim the main character played by Cillian Murphy turn from a beta character who's dependent on other people to becoming this fully fleshed out heroic character who is defending his friends and saving his friends. And it's a very strong transformation for me throughout the entire movie. The gradual progression is very satisfying to me. I think it's a very good case of characterization, and it's played very well and with very limited budget and filmmaking allowances, I guess, to where they have to really, Danny Boyle and his crew had to really use some very interesting techniques to create it. And by the end of the movie, I was just left really satisfied with it and very incredibly. It left me with a very thought-provoking feeling, I guess. What do you guys think of it? I'm kind of running out of words to talk about it.
Right.
Tiny, go ahead.
Yeah, I would absolutely put this movie in my vault as well.
Nice.
And I have a kind of an interesting experience with it because it came out in 2002, and I think it was like summer between our freshman and sophomore years of high school. Mm-hmm. I want to say that's when it came out. And
sounds about right.
I think I saw it sophomore year on your recommendations.
It came out in 2004, so it would have been junior.
2002. It came out.
Did it come out in 2002?
Yeah.
Wow, that's embarrassing.
Maybe you're thinking Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I messed up earlier. I said 2004. I apologize, listeners. Go ahead,
cool.
Tiny.
No, that's cool. See, I saw it like a sophomore year on your high recommendation, and I really didn't get it. I was like, I don't know. I just thought, it was okay.
Right.
I've never been a huge horror guy or anything. And then I didn't watch it for a long time. And I think I watched it when I was like maybe 19 or 20, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Because I think it's just, it was like right as I was starting to like kind of develop more of my taste in movies, like freshman, sophomore year. And it just didn't register with me for some reason when I saw it as like a 15, 16-year-old. But when I saw it later, I realized the brilliance of it and how well structured it is, and just the performance of it, how the very classic themes that they use kind of thrust into a modern genre or subgenre. I think it's great, and I agree with you. I really love the third act. It's my favorite part of the movie. Oh, yeah. Because it's sort of, I think what a lot of zombie movies kind of do or have done in the past is they set up this protocol where you have humans who are being pursued and hunted and whatever by these zombies, and that's kind of the movie. Like the rules are just so simple in that regard that it gets kind of boring almost.
Right.
By the time you get to this late in the second and into the third act of the movie, it's just kind of boring. But this just throws in a whole wild card where you get these other humans who are really just unpredictable. Because when it comes to the zombies or the rage people in this movie, you know exactly what you're getting. There's no wild card there. They're going to chase you. They want to eat you and turn you into one of them. It's just cut and dry. But when you run into other people, you never know what you're going to get. You might get the dregs of society who want to take advantage of you and do horrible things to you, which is what we get in this movie. Or you could get whoever, someone who's righteous and wants to reestablish society or something like that. And so I think it threw in a nice twist in the third act, and it was a really bold choice, a huge gamble that worked beautifully. And I think some of the best stuff is in the third act. I just think it's a terrific movie. I think it, like I said, it's classic themes, but it puts it to a modern subgenre, and it's really well done. I love the movie a lot.
Nice. Well said.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think of it?
If we were voting, and that's not really how the vault works. We tried it and it doesn't work out. Right. I would not vote this one to be in the vault.
Understandable.
In fact, I'd go as far as saying I dislike the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. The first time I watched it, I think I liked it. I watched it on kind of a horror bender with a bunch of other horror movies, and I was just kind of in the spirit of it. And then I watched it again in a couple of the following Shocktobers just to just because I liked it so much the first time, and I wanted to see if it kind of stuck. Was it really as good as everyone continued to say it was? And unfortunately, every time I watched it, my enjoyment of it lessened dramatically. In fact, I think that it suffers from budgetary constraints. I think it feels very independent, and I know that's tough to call that a knock against a movie. But when I think of other independent horror movies, there's a lot of independent horror movies, but when I think of, like Halloween, for example, it's just far superior in the art of filmmaking and the cinematography of it. I don't think that Cillian Murphy is a very good lead. I think that it goes to show that he really hasn't been in a whole lot of movies lately. There's just something missing for me in the movie. Again, if you have listened to this podcast before, I'm not a fan of zombie movies, and I guess I'm just kind of waiting for a movie to transcend that. I think some are close. I think that what's it called? Shaun of the Dead comes close, but this one feels like another run of the mill. Like, I have trouble distinguishing between this and Dawn of the Dead. I know they're dramatically different stylistically. One, of course, is a Zack Snyder movie. The other is Danny Boyle. But in terms of like the plot and the arc of the characters, it just feels like another rote zombie movie to me. I want to like it more. I feel like I want to watch it again just to see if I'm wrong. But even the stuff at the end doesn't interest me enough. Doesn't rein me back in the attention that I'd lost. Maybe I had seen too many zombie movies beforehand. But that they go to his house. Jim, is that his character's name?
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they go to his house and, because he's got to see his parents, and of course they're dead, so we got to move on. Maybe there's an army base where we'll get help. I don't know. It just all feels done before, and I haven't watched if you can call what we do professional. I haven't watched the movie in a professional sense since I saw it. I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe. So I maybe I'll give it a try this Shocktober and sit down with a pen and some paper. But for right now, I don't think I would give it my vote for a Vault movie.
Interesting.
Sorry.
To each their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand your troubles with it and everything. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a rebuttal for any of it.
I like your point about Cillian Murphy, because I think he's a very good actor, but he is, especially at this time point.
He's a strange actor.
He's a very he's a strong supporting actor.
Yeah,
character actor to an extent. But I know before this movie came out, Danny Boyle was his guy was Ewan McGregor. That was his guy,
right? And
they had a falling out. And I know Danny Boyle wanted Ewan McGregor to be in this and a lot of his movies.
That's right.
After Trainspotting.
Yeah, their falling out was that he wanted. I think Danny Boyle. The story goes that Danny Boyle wanted Ewan McGregor to be the lead in The Beach, but the studio wanted a bigger name, so they wanted him to cast Leo.
Right.
And then I guess that pissed
Ewan
off.
McGregor was busy with another movie at the time.
Another movie. So yeah, I think I would be curious to see how different 28 Days Later would play with Ewan McGregor in that lead role.
Me too.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Cillian Murphy, and it's kind of, it plays into the fact that the character is this naive, kind of dependent character, and I really like the scene where they go back to his house, because he's so, it's such a natural instinct kind of thing for him to do, because he just woke up in this world and he wants to go home. He wants to see his family, and no matter what these people who are clearly more in touch with what's going on are going to say, I could totally see someone in shock just being so adamant to go home, and I really enjoy.
I don't think that is. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. In fact, I think that's the first thing you would do.
Right. You just didn't.
My
like
point
it.
is that I've seen it before.
Okay, sure.
Derivative,
Yeah. Teach their own, sure. I thought that it was handled very well, though. Derivative or not, I really thought I get kind of choked up whenever he sees the note. He sees his parents' bodies in bed, and he sees the note saying just something about that note saying, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, you would because you're a bitch.
Jesus.
I'm kidding.
But the
you're
note,
my bitch.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But no, the note saying we left this world with you asleep. Now we're dreaming with you, or something like that. And then just the little end at the end that says "Don't wake up" is just that's chilling to me. Just on several levels, just knowing that I like that did maybe more world building for me than the shots of London, the desolate London. So. Your notes, Mike, are noted, but I'm still going to put 28 Days Later in the vault.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our 3 movies for the vault this time. What do you guys think?
Good choices.
Final words. Yeah, I think it'll work. I think these will find their place in the vault.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, that's the end. But of course, we won't leave you without a little bit of potpourri. But since we don't really do potpourri with Vault episodes, we're going to do a rapid fire potpourri. Each of us has 10 seconds to tell us what we're into, what we're looking forward to, or what we like really quick, as long as it smells good. So, Tiny, 10 seconds. Potpourri me.
Game of Thrones, Season 5 starting. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. They're catching up to the books now. I'm curious to see how they break away from that. So it's going to be fun.
Time's up.
Nice.
Matt, go.
I watched John Wick today for the first time, and Keanu Reeves is a really kick-ass guy, and I'm kind of curious if this is going to reinvigorate his career to be...
Time's up. I watched Power Rangers a bunch. I also saw Unfriended recently, and I was really surprised at the way they handled teen horror. I think a lot of young people are going to like the movie, and I liked it just enough.
Time's up, I guess. I wasn't keeping track.
I did it.
Awesome.
All right,
awesome.
That'll do it.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the Obsessive Viewer Podcast, and we'll throw it to the pre-recorded outros as usual, and thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Well, that's Vault Movies 3. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with a regular episode with Pat Kuhn from the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. We're going to talk about Ant-Man. And also, before you go, I want to mention that since we recorded this episode a couple months ago, Shocktober in Irvington 2 is happening. It's October 16th, 2015 at the Irving Theater. We're going to be screening short films from local filmmakers, short horror films from local filmmakers, giving away prizes, gift cards, stuff like that. It's going to be a blast. October 16th. Find out more information at shocktoberinirvington.com. Also, subscribe to the new Obsessive Viewer subreddit at r/obsessiveviewer. I just posted today a thread that had links to every single one of our podcast episodes, which was a pretty productive way to spend several hours at work today. So since this episode was kind of short relative to our other episodes, and we didn't really do a proper potpourri section or anything like that because it was a Vault episode, and we were all three really tired when we recorded it. Since in lieu of a regular potpourri section for this episode, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a little sneak preview of the solo side project podcast that I've been working on for the past couple weeks. Basically, it's called Anthology, and the goal of the podcast is to kind of go over classic science fiction anthology television shows, which basically means The Twilight Zone and then eventually The Outer Limits. The goal of the podcast is to kind of go through and kind of give my thoughts on it as a viewer, as a modern day viewer, I guess, and kind of give some background on the episodes and stuff. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I actually just got a voicemail number set up for it. So anyway, here's a short preview from the first couple episodes. Here in a couple weeks, I'll put the entire first episode on the Obsessive Viewer feed, and then all that will have information on how you can find where you can find Anthology. So here you go. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Anthology, a podcast exploring science fiction anthology television during TV's golden age. You kind of see where he is coming from as a person who's terrified, but he's also kind of not necessarily making the best of a bad situation, because he doesn't make the best of it because it's a horrible situation, but he has this aura about him where he's having a conversation. I love the way that the story unfolds. That's what I keep coming back to, is that it's such a natural progression, and it's played so well by Holloman that it's hard not to get really, really invested in his character, even though not only does he not know anything about himself, we as the viewer have no idea what's going on. We have no context for who he is or what he is. We just have these little hints that he is at heart a good person and someone that we can root for as he slowly descends into this kind of madness. Something about them all together just lacked a punch for me. This episode's well written and the story reaches a satisfying conclusion, but honestly, it just feels like it's on rails. There's a story that Serling wanted to tell, and he hits its beats, and then it's done. In the context of the late 50s and early 60s, and in context of television of that era, it's really no surprise that the Twilight Zone had an episode that was set in the Old West, especially so soon in its run. Western shows were insanely popular at the time. I'm not saying that Serling wrote Mr. Denton on Doomsday with the intention of attracting fans of the Western genre to his little sci-fi anthology series. Whether conscious or not, it's interesting to see such an early episode of The Twilight Zone play so much into what was popular at the time on television. The contrast in the lighting between the viewing room and the foyer set just perfectly defines the seclusion that Barbara is in, and kind of instantly pits the viewer into this somewhat surreal world where she's defiant of change and ignorant of willfully ignorant of the present. So there you have it, a short preview of Anthology, the podcast I've been working on as a side project for the past couple of weeks. You can find a little bit more information about the show and links and all that at obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts, and the official site is anthologypod.com, but there's nothing really there yet. But there will be. Like I said, on probably August 3rd is when I'm going to release the first episode on the Obsessive Viewer feed. It's all right. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with Pat Kuhn from the Nerds You're Looking For podcast for a talk about Ant-Man.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes, and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at ObsessiveViewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@ObsessiveViewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at ObsessiveViewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheObsessiveViewer, and follow us on Twitter at ObsessiveViewer, at ObsessiveTiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, ObsessiveBookNerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.